Just waiting for Vicky. Let's see. Is it working? Let me see. Nope, how come it's not working? All right, I'm gonna try this again. Sorry guys, I'm gonna exit out of this and try again. Oh,
Hi.
there we go. Hi.
Hi,
It was
Jack.
working for a second there.
Yeah, God, I was waiting. I was like, let me join, let me join.
Yeah, it was so weird. I kept sending you requests, but I'm so happy that it's working now.
I know, it's finally worked out. Okay, that's great.
Amazing. So thanks so much for joining me on this IG Live. I'm super excited to talk to you and to introduce you and kind of why we're here today. So I'm just going to give a brief kind of introduction about yourself to our audience. And if there's anything that I'm missing, feel free to add it in. So with me
Yes.
today, we have and Vicky is a Toronto-based Chinese woman who moved to Canada for university. She's graduated now. She's working full-time while pursuing her dreams to become a lawyer or a public policy maker. She's really passionate about racial and social justice. So that's kind of what she's working on. And she's written this book, Through My Eyes, exploring the world while being Chinese. Sorry. Being Asian, and it's going to be out in August 2021, so very, very soon in the summer. You can go on Indiegogo.com to see her campaign, and you can also follow her on Instagram. So I believe here we have her Instagram, but it's Vicky, VICKY _ and a bunch of Z's or Z if you're in Canada, 7 of them in a row.
It is actually exactly 7 of them.
Yeah, I counted before. I was like, I'm going to get this right. But I'm so excited that you can join me. And if there's anything that I've missed out, feel free to hop in and fill in any gaps.
For sure. No, like you did really great. Thank you for introducing me. You actually probably did better than I would do myself. So thank you for having me here and giving me this opportunity to speak to everyone. It's really great. Thank
Amazing. So let's jump into it. What inspired you to write this book? I know that you've talked a lot about kind of the backdrop and the story in your campaign that people can read about on Indiegogo.com, but maybe you can kind of dive a little bit deeper about your inspiration for this book.
For sure, yes. So I have been traveling to many parts of the world and just trying, and since turned 17, 18. So being able to document my story, tell my own experience as a Chinese Asian woman traveling around the world has always been my dream. So that has always been in the back of my head. I always wanted to find the opportunity to do that. Since the pandemic a year ago, officially really sat down at home and started to work on this book. That's just because, because of quarantine, I just freshly graduated out of university and, just seeing how the world unfolded outside of my window, seeing the news reports every day, just seeing the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes and hates. So I just finally decided to do, you know what, I'm going to take an action on it. I'm going to write my book, tell my stories, and raise awareness for our Asian community here in Canada, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people share the feeling as I do. So yeah, so that's when the book came about, and I think that's my outlet for activism, and also kind of like a platform for a lot of my friends to tell their stories to me, and for me to put it into words and document it into a book.
Amazing. So it's a combination of kind of your research, your experience, and also kind of the voices and the stories that you hear from your friends and your family, I suppose, as well.
Exactly, yes.
Amazing. And so, can you talk a little bit about your writing background? Do you have any kind of writing endeavors that you've done throughout your life, maybe in university or in high school, or is this kind of really your first formal, I guess we could call it, publication?
This is actually, in fact, my first formal publication, which I'm so excited about. But prior to that, in university, pretty much I said because I studied social science in university, so I did sociology and political science. So I have been writing a lot of stuff, and
Mm,
through writing, essays, writing papers, that actually gave me that idea that you know what, I think I can write longer than the essays. I think I can put essays together to a book. So I kind of feel encouraged in university to, to pursue more writing. And obviously English is my second language. My first language is Mandarin Chinese. So writing has been a little bit challenging, but but I always feel very supported by my community and by my publishers. So yeah, so far it has been pretty positive right now. Here and there I make some grammar mistakes, and that just sometimes looks very childish, but I feel like I'll be, being able to put my ideas, put my thoughts into words. That's
mm,
just a really fabulous experience for myself.
mm, mm.
Mhm.
And so, in your campaign, and I'm sure those who go on it will be able to get a really good, clear picture about it. But I want to talk about a specific term that you use that really kind of resonated with me on the one hand, but also I wanted to unpack a little further. You talk about the angry Asian, and I know that you kind of talk about it deeper in one of the sections in your book. And of course, I can't wait to read more about it when I get the books in my hand. But I wanted to know if we could get a little sneak peek on what you define that kind of figure. What does that figure look like? Does it appear? Is it something that you were talking about for yourself, or was it something that you observed kind of in others, or basically how did that term come to be?
Absolutely. I think it actually, by the word angry or anger, I'm playing with the words here, because I think very commonly, the stereotype about Asian women or Asian people in general is that our folks are very submissive, especially when it comes to women, Asian women. They're hyper sexualized and they're seen as docile, submissive. So I always wanted to fight and battle against those stereotypes because, first of all, they're really not true because that's completely through the eyes of other people. We're being otherized here, being seen as just one unitary, the same group that share the exact same trait. So we don't have the voice and representation to represent ourselves, to really represent and really portray who we are really and how diverse our folks are. So the term angry, it really comes from, it's kind of a battle against that stereotype. And
Mhm.
also I wanted to see more Asian women and people in general to be more outspoken, more courageous, and just being more represented in all sorts of outlets, on social media, on
Mhm.
media, politics, entertainment, all sorts of realms of life. I wanted to see our folks stand up for ourselves, speak up, and really show that side of us.
Mhm.
We're going to be oppressed and suppressed, and leave ourselves up for interpretation for other people, but we're
Mhm.
going to really show who we really are.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you say that because when I read the term angry Asian, I actually resonated more on a personal level. But now that you explained it more, it actually makes a lot more sense on why I felt angry because it was precisely battling against these stereotypes. And so it's interesting because when I saw angry, I was like, this is just how I'm feeling without any words to be able to explain why I'm feeling it. I'm going, this is what I'm feeling. I'm really angry. I'm seeing all of this kind of devastation that's happening to our community, whether it's locally or internationally. I've got friends who are in the States who are terrified to go outside. And yet, we haven't heard about this. It feels like it's almost unheard of. It feels like prior to these kinds of, I guess you could say, these situations, we've always been seen, especially women, we've always been seen as, kinder, smaller, cuter, or Exactly. And so the anger comes from, but that's not me. That's not how I would ever define myself or categorize myself. And this anger not only comes from watching those in pain and feeling like I can't do anything about it, but it is also on a bigger note to fight against these stereotypes that you so eloquently talked about.
Absolutely. And I always feel like, so the other day, it's good that you mentioned, what's going on in the world right now, especially what happened to the Asian women, right, in the tragic Atlanta shooting. And very quickly, I saw our community here in Toronto also organized and mobilized ourselves. And the other day, I think that was just a few weekends ago, there was this rally to show solidarity and allyship to what happened to the Asian Americans just as south of the border, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I saw most of the orders and people who were at the rally were a lot of Asian women, and just seeing them on the stage, seeing them, raising their voice and really raising awareness and trying to speak for ourselves, our community, it was very fascinating to see. And I believe historically there are a lot of Asian women who are doing these works, but unfortunately our society isn't giving them enough credit. And so it's really up for us, it's up to our generation to keep it pushing, to show our leadership, to show how, how courageous, how strong our community really are. It really is, right? So yeah, so the anger, as you said, personal level, I always feel angry a lot of times. I'm like,
Right.
why? What can I do? How do I
Mm.
stand up? Personal level, there's definitely a lot of that. And also on like a larger level, community and the social level, it's that we really need to, raise our own voice and really
Mm.
speak up.
Absolutely. Can we talk a little bit about, because I think this is a perfect segue to when you talk about the next generation, how it's really kind of on us, and hopefully we will all have the motivation and the drive, and I'm sure we all do, to kind of keep this level of activism forward, especially for our community, and to build not ourselves, but also allyship amongst, with other BIPOC communities. But can I just rewind a little bit and ask, how do we reconcile our generation, or how do you feel that we can with our prior generation, with our parents, with our grandparents, the ones who immigrated here, the ones who ultimately kind of taught us to keep our heads down and to always keep working. I know that your book touches upon teaching skills and ways to bring up kind of sensitive topics with our parents, but could you talk a little bit more about how you feel could be the next steps to take if we want to address this with those older than us?
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think personally, I'm going through that. I'm in that process of communicating, informing my parents. But I think the key here really is communication. I really dislike the term of canceling, because a lot of times we really quickly jump into conclusion to cancel someone because of the thing that they say, because how they feel, what they think, right?
Mm.
But when it's to generational gap or understanding about racism, we really have to communicate and understand each other, because our older generation, they didn't grow up in an environment that probably is necessarily as diverse as right now, the world that we're living in. And we opportunity, it's a privilege for us to be able to expose different cultures, diversity, being to interact with people who are from different backgrounds. But a lot of our elder generations didn't have the fortune to do that. Like for my family, as an example, my parents, both of them still live in China. So for them
Mm.
to really see the world as I am through my eyes, obviously that's going to be different. And I think
Mm.
the communication, patience and respect is really the key here. I think we got to understand where they're coming from and trying to explain what we're going through, what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
Because example, like how I speak to my parents about this is I go to a class, I sit to a person who not necessarily look the same as me, not necessarily speak the same language as I do. So I'm not going to just discriminate or mistreat them in a different way just because they are different from me, right?
Mm.
But so it's that kind of examples, just to showing them that in our environment, diversity is so normalized, and we got to respect each other, and we got to work with other people of color. And in order for our community to get the respect, to to earn the respect, we got to show the same way how we treat each other, right? I think in East Asian culture, this is a very common thing. It's like how you want to. It's like the golden rule, right? So I think we got to show other communities that we're willing to work with them, we're willing to support them, and
Yeah.
we want the mutual support coming from them as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. What you said resonated so much with me, especially the stance of being understanding of our parents, how they haven't grown up in the same circumstances that we have, still living in East Asia, or they're immigrants here. Oops. Oh, there we go. Sorry, the connection was lagging a little bit, but I hope you're okay. Yeah.
Go ahead,
So
Jacqueline.
I was just saying, the kind of the position of understanding is so important, because whether our parents are either, or even our grandparents, whether they're still in East Asia or they've immigrated here, their context is different from ours. And so we experience things quite differently, culturally, even generationally, even time-wise. I mean, my parents are born in the 50s and 60s, so they've experienced a whole different world than I have. And so to be able to bridge that really does come down to communication. It really is taking that patience and that time to build those new vocabulary into our daily language for them to understand what we see, but also for us to be able to empathize and take that time to understand that they might not see it our way, simply because there is that inevitable gap between, time-wise, or even spatially or temporally speaking. So that's totally true.
Absolutely. I just wanted to quickly add on another thing that because you mentioned vocabulary, add on to their vocabulary of what kind of words that I can use, because I think language has a huge part in how we understand the world. A lot of times, for example, in English, racism, anti-Black racism, colorisms, they're very commonly used terms that we would just understand off the bat. But I think a lot of these concepts are still quite foreign in a lot of Asian countries, because that's just not the reality that they're living, right? So I think taking the time to explain what these terms mean to them, mean to ourselves, even, colorism in community, and all sort of stuff. I think, it's really important to also inform our older generation what these mean and what consequences these concepts could lead to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I'm so excited, Vicky, because it sounds like, a lot of this material is going to be in your book. It's coming out again, like I said, in August, and I'm super excited to get my hands on a copy. So I'm really looking forward to it. But I am going to open the floor to any of our audience members to see if they have any questions that they want to ask. But in the meantime, while we're waiting, we can definitely keep chatting. So I don't know if there's anything else that I've missed or that you want to add on while we're waiting for questions.
I really like all this stuff that you just mentioned, all these questions. I think they're super important, even for me to continue to think about these questions and continue to add on to my own, my own understanding, and how I continue to see the world, to explore the world. And I also just want to mention that because the book is written about my previous experience of, traveling to the UK, to Colombia. I went to some places to volunteer to teach languages. I think I'm definitely is going to continue to, bring forward this experience to my future explorations and my journeys. Obviously, after COVID is over, hopefully I'll be able to get my feet and start traveling and going to different places again. And I really welcome people to follow up with me to, hopefully I will be able to write a part 2 of the book, part 3 of the book. So stay tuned. I'm looking into the future. Really look forward to it.
And I do have actually one question of my own. You had mentioned that English is your second language and Mandarin Chinese is your first. Are you planning on writing a translated version, or does the book already come in both English and Mandarin?
Yeah, great question. I'm very excited to do a translated version to Chinese. I know that's going to take a lot of time for me to personally translate it, because of, we talked about the terms and vocabularies. not so commonly used in Chinese, and maybe doesn't even make that much sense in Chinese. So I will try to take my time to translate it, but right now it's only in English. But I look forward to make a Chinese version of the book.
Wonderful. Well, I can't wait. When there is a, you know, a translated version, I'll definitely have to get my hands on a copy too. So we do have a question. Oh, sorry, from the audience. It's Rubita who's asked, do you have any book recommendations for us?
Yes, I was waiting for this one. Just during quarantine, I came up with my two favorite books to read, specific about the Asian community. So one of them is Minor Feelings. I'm not sure, you might have heard of it, Minor Feelings by Kathy Park Hong. So it's a really great book. She's this Korean American writer, and she's also a poet. So she wrote a lot of stuff in a very, metaphorical and just very interesting way. Her writing is very interesting. So it's an interesting novel, plus also has this kind of poetic flow. I really like how she plays with the words. So yeah, she wrote a lot about the Asian community in the US and how minor feelings so specific to the Asian community, you know, about microaggression and all these just unique experience to the Asian people. And another book is We Gon' Be Alright by Jeff Chang. So that book is not specific to Asians, but it's about people of color and about this racial segregated reality in the US. He wrote a lot about Black Lives Matter, though, in his book. So I think it's a really great example to show how Asians can be great allies to Black community, not just in the US, but also Canada and worldwide as well. So these two books are the top two on my list.
Wonderful. And while we're also waiting for questions, the one that I also just thought of now is what are the things that you do to get you inspired, to get you into that groove of writing? Is there a certain music that you listen to? How do you prepare yourself as an author?
Yeah, I actually love talking to people. I think number one inspiration of my writing book stories are always come from my friends, people, even strangers. I love to talk to them, ask them about their experience of anything or negative about being Asians, or just in, you know, in their daily lives. Whatever stories that they give me, it's always like connected to one another. So I can always group them into themes and write about it. And yeah, and then as you said, music is a big thing. I love playing music in the background while I write. I recently found Afrobeats is it has that groove and also that positive vibe that gets me into the thinking and writing mode. So I love that. Yeah, so hip hop as well. But I do think conversations, speaking to my friends, you know, having a chat like this helps a lot with my writing.
Oh, well, amazing. I hope that this is another kind of source of inspiration for your part two, or even kind of further
Yeah.
writing years.
Yes, Jacqueline, find your own name in the next book. Be my for another story in my book.
Well, this was so much fun. It was so amazing to get to talk to you, to get to know kind of your story, your context, your book, kind of your perspective on things. I'm going to kind of wrap up this conversation now. I don't think we've had any other questions from the audience member, but guys, look out for the book. It's coming out on August 2021. You can see the campaign on indiegogo.com. Oh, actually we have one. Woo! A last bit of question. We'll answer this one before we go, but it's, how did you go about researching the history of relations between Asians and other racialized groups in Canada? That's a really good question.
Wow, it's almost like these people have already read my book. So I actually, I dedicated a chapter about Asian and Indigenous relations in Canada, because I feel like that's so not commonly talked about or written about. So I did my research to see how in history these two communities reacted. And I found that, so I did a lot of just reading on the post blogs online, and were able to find a lot of researchers that actually did in-depth research on these topics. One of the story I would love to share is that actually back in the days when Chinese laborers from Hong Kong, from the Canton area, moved to the West Coast and BC to do the hard labor work to build a railroad, right? So that's when it encountered a lot of indigenous folks who you know, like reside on those lands. And actually they were able to intermarry and to have a lot of So obviously there are positive and negative interactions. So we always have to mention that, because not trying to romanticize these relations. But the point is, do have a history of interacting with one another, communicating, and sometimes supporting or marrying, creating family with each other. So I think those histories or those stories are so important for us to learn about, because don't continue to read about them, write about them, talk about them, they will just get buried into the dust in history. So having this, having these materials really inform myself that we can move forward, we can reconcile with one another, knowing that we had a history, we had a shared one.
I think it's great that you've kind of research the material that's already there, the existing material, and then kind of like surface it and put it into your book to address it even further. I think you're absolutely right. The Chinese and indigenous kind of relationship is rarely talked about. I mean, now we're hearing more about the Black community and the Asian American community and kind of their history and their interactions, but very rarely, at least in the Canadian indigenous folks, you know, even for myself, that's kind of like a very new subject, I guess you could say. Yeah, I haven't really explored it myself, so that's a really important one. But yeah, I mean, that's such a great question. Thank you so much, Francois, for like swooping that in at the very last moment. But yeah, so again, it was so lovely. I don't see any other questions anymore. I don't want to kind of cut it off too soon because we had one that came in so quickly. But again, it was so good to speak to you. Indiegogo, that's where the campaign is. Vicky_Z or Z, 7 of them in a row. That's where you can follow Vicky on Instagram. And it was so lovely. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Those are really great questions. I really had a great time chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time too.
Likewise. All right, well, have a good evening, and thanks for joining, everyone.
You as well. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jacqueline. I'll see you soon. Bye.